It's fascinating because he's staying in the restaurant space, and I guess he feels like he's learned a lot, even though he sold out a little bit out of Chipotle this quarter.
That's right. He's done pretty well there. You know, Burger King was a good performer for Pershing, and Chipotle, you know, he got in when they were really hurting, so I think he's up on that one too. So you're right. This is sort of the third that we're seeing from him in the restaurant space. You know, people have been talking about an activist showing up at Starbucks for a while. I think there's some concern about the post-Howard Schultz era and how this all looks. You know, they recently said they're going to do some layoffs. We know they're struggling to grow in the U.S., so there's some problems here. I mean, what we don't really know right now is what Ackman plans to do, whether he's going to agitate for changes or whether this is more of kind of a passive, long stake that he's taking at Starbucks.
Right, because some of his more recent positions have been a little more passive. He took a position in Lowe's, for example, although that wasn't quite passive.
Right.
Also, UTX, he's agitating for a breakup into three, so we don't really know what he'll do here. What could he do?
Push for board seats. I mean, really sort of go after, say they need a new CEO. I mean, obviously the activist playbook is out there, but even with Chipotle, you know, he sort of said some things about the board, but hasn't really made too much noise there. He hasn't said a ton about Chipotle, so maybe this is the kinder, gentler Bill Ackman, you know, kind of showing his face with this investment. But like I said, there's a lot to sort of worry about when it comes to Starbucks and kind of the struggles to grow that they're facing. Yeah,
now there have been many changes made, and some of them did well for the stock and some of them did very poorly for the stock. What are analysts saying about where Starbucks needs to improve?
You know, they're talking about China, right? It's China, 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 which says something a little bit about kind of where they are in the U.S. I mean, this is the company that really introduced Americans to coffee culture, got Americans off of Maxwell House and Folgers, but they've slowed down. You know, the jokes about a Starbucks on every corner, that's become a real issue, and whether or not they're quote unquote saturated in the US. And also they're getting passed on the higher end, you know, Blue Bottle and these other things. People are willing to pay up a lot for coffee, and I think Starbucks, because it's so ubiquitous, gets kind of positioned in the middle of the road. And that's not really the place you want to be in coffee right now. So the US market is tough.
What about margins? Is there room for improvement?
You know, always they've done really well on digital ordering. I mean, the thing for them has been to get people to buy more food, and it just has not worked. They've been desperate to kind of sell more food in the U.S. for years because they've got people that are going in there 5 times a week or more to buy their coffee. If they could tack on a couple extra bucks to that order, it would help the margins, help the sales, and it's really been a struggle for Starbucks.
Well, certainly today isn't hurting, but the stock has been doing pretty well. I mean, it's been in a range for a couple of years, but I guess there is room to break out.
For a long time, this was the standout of the restaurant industry. Solid comps, solid growth year after year, you know, with Howard at the helm. And I think, like I said, the concern right now is where do they go without Howard Schultz there, involved in the day-to-day operation? And does this leadership team has what it takes to kind of pivot and find that next step of growth?